Hello Aries, and welcome to my channel Tarot by Gabrielle. This is going to be a general reading for Sun, Moon, Rising, and Venus signs, looking at your connection to the person that you are dealing with and needing to learn the most from right now. We are looking at all three sides of the connection, so we've got your energy toward it, their energy toward it, and the energy in between it, the concept being that there are three sides to every story. So we've got your version of the truth, their version of the truth, and this higher level unbiased truth in the middle. This middle section is really looking at what is the deeper purpose of the connection and the best way for you to move forward in order to align further with your higher self. As I do in all of my readings, I have pulled the overall energy and clarified those messages as well as the overall theme for the reading, which we will jump into in just a second, but I still have a different tarot deck I'll be pulling for each side of this connection, for each side of this connection, as well as the advice deck I'll be using to close out the reading in the extended. Any information on the extended reading or on booking a personal reading with me is in the description box below. Last thing, please remember that these are general readings. They are not here to resonate fully for everyone, and they won't resonate fully for everyone. So do please remember to take what does resonate and helps your personal situation and leave what does not. On that note, the whole reading can be reversed, so if that is the case for you, that's totally fine and totally normal. Again, take what helps, leave what doesn't. All right, Aries. Try to combine those two words. Let's jump on in. On your side of this connection, you have "It is worth it" with the Five of Wands in reverse. Now, the Five of Wands in reverse is this energy of kind of like this energy of suffering in silence. Dealing with or like avoiding conflict for the purpose of keeping the peace. And I feel as if that's kind of the approach that was taken in this connection. This energy of, I don't want to fight, I don't want to argue, I don't want to deal with it, so I'm just not going to say anything. And I feel like, part of you is like, well, this might be better in the end because we can avoid conflict and things of that nature. Now, I actually feel what's interesting is this isn't very like you. I feel like you're usually a little bit more outspoken. So probably what happened, if I had to guess, is that every time you spoke up about a need or you tried to communicate, maybe it was taken very defensively. And maybe the other person, would make you it just got to the point where it didn't really matter. You tried to speak up or you tried to talk about what was going on or how you were feeling, and maybe you would just constantly get shut down. And I feel like with this "It is worth it" card, you're like, well, I want this connection to work because I love this person and I care about them. So it feels worth it to me. It feels worth it for me to kind of bury my needs and, pay more attention to maybe the other person or just kind of, try to get by. And I feel like that kind of ended up like hurting you in the end. Now, this person, the feelings are mutual with the Sun in reverse. So it's interesting because I do feel like this person has similar feelings for you that you do, right? The feelings are mutual. I feel like they love and care about you too. But ego, Sun in reverse, ego seems to be their biggest blockage here. And I feel as if, ego is what's going to block us from love the most. It's what's going to block us from vulnerability the most, from, honesty and all the things that really are required for a healthy relationship. And ego can present itself in so many different forms. It's not necessarily to be demonized. Our ego, when you think of like a person who's egotistical, I think it kind of has this negative connotation. We all have egos, and sometimes our egos control every single one of us. And the problem, I feel like, with this person in their ego is, our ego is there to protect us. It's there to put us in situations that are familiar, even if those situations aren't necessarily what's good for us, because your ego's sole purpose is to survive. So this person's like survival mechanism, I feel like, jumped in, and it's like, yeah, they have maybe, even if this connection is still happening, like mutual feelings for you, but it just feels like their ego completely got in the way in some way, shape, or form. I don't know, it's like, yeah, they had feelings for you, but they, I don't know, weren't capable of showing up for those feelings. Because someone loving you and someone knowing how to love you and being willing to do the work to love you, very different things. In between this connection, you have inevitable with the Three of Cups in reverse. What has happened in this connection was like meant to happen. I feel like it was inevitable that things were going to fall apart. One of the best things that I've learned is that there's really nothing that we can do to make other people treat us better. I think that sometimes when, other people aren't treating us the way that we deserve, we get very angry because we feel like, we're not enough in that situation. Like, why are you treating me poorly? Why aren't you seeing my value? Why aren't you treating me like I deserve? Why don't you believe I'm deserving of better? When in reality, it has way more to do with them than it does to do with us. So I don't know. I feel like what happened in this connection was like bound to happen in some way, shape, or form. Overall theme of the reading is shadow. So our shadow side is the side of us that is unhealed, still very traumatized, and gets very easily triggered. It kind of really comes out when it's triggered, but can still get very easily triggered. And we all have a shadow. We all have a part of ourselves that we don't love. I don't want to say we don't love, because learning to love yourself and like including your shadow is really part of the healing journey. But we all have a side of ourselves that we don't like. Let's say a side of ourselves that we're ashamed of, a side of ourselves that we wish we could change. That is your shadow. And I feel like this person, it's almost like this connection brings out the shadow side of the other person. So I feel like it's a very triggering connection. Maybe this person has a tendency to like anger you more than usual, or like just get to you in general more than usual. I don't know, though, like what the specifics are. So let's jump in. This is Aries side of the connection to the person they are dealing with and needing to learn the most from right now. I got a new mic today and a new camera, actually. This is my second reading I'm doing with this new camera. My phone broke, so I had to get something new. So I got a new phone. And anyway, I'm hoping that it's working well. All right, Aries side of the connection. I did a little test video, but it sounded fine. So I don't know. We'll see. Oof. Okay. Three of Pentacles in reverse. 9 of Cups. Okay. The Three of Pentacles in reverse is very similar to this Three of Cups in reverse energy. Like, things falling apart or never coming together in the way that you desired. Now, this 9 of Cups, I feel like this connection, maybe in the beginning or in a lot of ways, was like a wish fulfillment for you. You were like, wow, this is really wonderful. I'm really happy to have met this person. But then it just feels like things never, like the pieces never fell into place. That's what the Three of Pentacles in reverse is in this. Like, the pieces never fell into place. And I feel like this person's ego was a big culprit in that. Their ego was part of what was really not allowing things to become what they could have been. Now, again, 3 sides to every story. There's always something that's within your control as well. There's always a mirror. Aries side of the connection. Ooh. What? King of Wands, King of Swords. The Chariot. Could be dealing with a fire sign or an air sign, but I feel like what this is talking about is I feel like you and this person connected on the very like, I feel like there's an intellectual connection and like there's a lot of passion here. Maybe physical intimacy, things of that nature. I feel like there is an absence of the King of Cups, like emotional connection and feeling safe emotionally in this connection. It's like you guys maybe, the conversation was good. You were able to, like I said, like connect on an intellectual level. The passion was there. The excitement for the connection was there. But the absence of really the King of Pentacles and the King of Cups. So the King of Pentacles is kind of like feeling very grounded, stable. I don't feel like there's a whole lot of stability in this connection. I actually feel like there's probably a lot of ups and downs. But yeah, I feel like there were good things. I feel like it was like they were the King of Cups and King of Swords you were looking for. But there was the absence of the stability and the emotional connection that you're looking for. And it almost feels like you were willing to kind of hold on to the connection because you were like, but this stuff is good. Yeah, I might be missing that stuff, but this stuff is good. And I feel like, because the Chariot is like, I feel like that's why you continued to move forward with it for as long as you did, or even if you are currently in it. So, I don't know. It's like you were like, well, the emotional connection was missing though. Now, I will say, I think emotional connections come with like learning to trust the other person. And if we don't feel like we can ever fully trust the other person, we're not going to have an emotional connection with them, because emotional connection is rooted in emotional safety. And I feel like there was a lack of that. A connection that lacks emotional safety is not a relationship. It's an attachment. And we have to take a look at what's really going on whenever we're dealing with that. But I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, Aries side of this connection. Who are all these freaking people? Queen of Swords in reverse. Ten of Pentacles. Ace of Pentacles on the Hierophant. And then there's the Five of Pentacles, the Tower. Oh, there's a lot going on in this connection, isn't there? It's like relationship status. It's complicated. Okay. It's very obvious with the Ten of Pentacles in reverse and the Queen of Swords in reverse that you weren't receiving treatment that aligned with your value. Like the Ten of Pentacles in reverse is like being undervalued or undervaluing something. And with the Queen of Swords in reverse, it's almost like you were being undervalued in this connection, but it's like you were so determined, and maybe are so determined to make it work, that it's almost like you closed off your heart to any other possibility than this connection for a while. And I feel like, because with the Five of Pentacles, you didn't want to lose this. You didn't want to lose this. So you were like, fine, the King of Cups and King of Swords, like I don't need the King of Wands and King of Swords. I don't need the King of Cups. I don't need the King of Pentacles, but like you do, because you deserve someone who shows up for you in all of the ways, who is stable, who you can trust, who you can connect with intellectually, who you can have an emotional connection with, who you do have a passionate connection with. Like that, it is possible to have it all. I think a lot of times we think, oh, but what if I'm being unrealistic? But you aren't asking for too much when you're being asked to experience the love you deserve. And I think it's so important to remember that. But anyway, I do feel like this connection made you feel very undervalued, almost like maybe even taken for granted a little bit. And I feel like I don't want to say you kept quiet about it for the whole time, but I do feel like at a certain point you kind of you're suffering in silence. You were like, I don't want to fight, I don't want to argue. I just want things to be good. And I feel like, anytime we suppress how we feel, this is something I still struggle with in my relationship. I still struggle to speak up about how I'm feeling in the moment, and then it'll come out in other ways, and then I'll have to backtrack and be like, okay, no, this is actually what's going on. It's not about the dishes in the sink. It's about, me feeling like I need more help around the house, or whatever the case might be. That's actually a real example I've used in past relationships before. I was like blowing up about dishes in the sink, and I realized this has nothing to do with this instance of dishes in the sink. This is because I feel alone. And sometimes we don't realize that, our emotions and the way that we feel, we can only, hold back for so long. So if your needs aren't being met and you're trying to just push that down or avoid facing that, eventually it's going to come out. And then the other person's going to be like, whoa, where'd this come from? And you're like, well, it's actually been building up for a while. But anyway, if this person does struggle with ego, it's probably pretty hard for you to speak up about what you were feeling anyway. This person's energy toward Aries, the feelings are mutual with the Sun in reverse. Man. Star in reverse, Lovers in reverse, Nine of Swords. This person's pretty freaking insecure. They've got a lot of insecurities that they allow to dictate their decisions. Now, Here's the funny thing about people who tend to be a little bit more egotistical. You know, people often think that people who are egotistical like really love themselves. They're so full of themselves, right? They love themselves a little too much. Actually, people who are egotistical, like talking narcissism now, I'm not saying this person's a narcissist. I am not here to diagnose anybody. That is not my role. That is not my job. That is not my expertise. But when you're dealing with someone who struggles with narcissism, I have learned, or like is a little bit egotistical, I've learned that it's not actually that they love themselves, it's that there's an absence of a sense of self. So they create an ego that they have to love because they don't really know or like themselves at all. So it's actually the absence of self-love. This lovers in reverse is this feeling of this person not feeling lovable, not feeling good enough for love. So I feel like a lot of that came out in this connection in terms of projection. I feel like they did a lot of projecting in this connection. It's something I had dealt with in the past when it was funny because I was in a relationship with someone who I learned later on was a narcissist, and this person would always call me insecure. You're so insecure. You're so insecure. And I didn't think I was. I had insecurities and I needed to work through a lot of them, but I didn't think I was. And come to find out, he was super insecure. And he just all the time would tell me I was insecure, show me how insecure I was. And I was like, what the hell? You know, I think a lot of times when we struggle with loving ourselves, we feel like we have to bring other people down to make ourselves feel better. And it's not that like I'm not saying this person is really aware of what they're doing, you know, but I do definitely feel like their insecurities got in the way. So, you know, typically when people don't really like themselves, they try to keep other people from getting too close to who they really are because they don't like themselves. They're afraid you're not going to like them or love them. So they keep you at a distance and they show up in their ego. Because if they can like their ego, maybe you can like their ego, but it's not genuine, it's not authentic, and it's not sustainable. This person's energy toward Aries. Six of Pentacles in reverse, Emperor in reverse. There's the control. Why are all these in reverse? Three of Swords, Five of Pentacles. Okay. So, this person's been hurt before. Who hasn't? And I feel like this experience of heartbreak in their past has caused them to this need to control. I feel like they have a need to control. And that need to control, I feel, really came through in not giving you what it is that you needed. You know, control is a lack of vulnerability. It's a lack of authenticity. It's a lack of opening yourself up to, you know, somebody else. When you're trying to control somebody else, you're trying to remain safe. You know, you're saying, if I can control you, I know what you're going to do, so I'm not going to get hurt in the process. And that's typically where we start to deal with people who, you know, assume the role of like takers in relationships. And they take, and you give, but then when you stop giving because you're realizing they're not giving back, they'll give you a little bit. They'll give you a little bit here and there so that you're like, okay, and then you continue to give, they stop giving, go back to taking, and it's just it's a recurring cycle. And I feel like that's what happened in this connection. Give, they stop giving. You stop giving because you're not getting what you need, so they're like, okay, like I guess I'll give you something. So then they give you a little bit, but then you start giving again, and they immediately assume the role of taker. And I feel like, you know, that kind of happened over and over again, and that's probably why then eventually you got to this point where you're like, why even say anything? It doesn't change anything. It just leaves me. Things always go back to how they were or never really change. This person's energy toward Aries. Freaking Lovers in reverse again. King of Wands. It's so interesting because, and I feel like this could be your energy, whether you're male or female. Death in reverse. I feel like it's so funny because I don't know if you would recognize this on the surface, but I feel like they don't feel good enough for you. Which is why I feel their ego had such a major role. Because again, if they don't feel lovable, for who they really are on the inside. They're not going to let you get too close, and they're going to show up in ego, because the only part of them that they like is their ego. So they're like, well, if I show up as my ego, then that means that means Aries must love me, because I love my ego. But you can see right through that, and I don't know. I just feel like this person is living in the world of their ego illusion, which most people are until there's some sort of spiritual awakening. So I'm not saying that like this is a bad person. I think that this is a very unhealed person, and I feel like they're the hurt people kind of thing, right? Now, that doesn't make it okay. We can have empathy for what other people are doing and how other people treat us without, bearing the burden of the tolerance of that behavior. Because you aren't expected to tolerate the behavior of anybody who's treating you poorly, even if they're struggling. That doesn't make it okay. That's one of the things I've learned is that one of the most important, I would even say like the most important characteristic that we should look for in a partner is someone who can stay kind even in the midst of arguments. Because someone who can still show up with kindness and compassion and treat you well, even when they're mad, even when they're upset, even when they're frustrated, even when they're struggling, that's someone who's willing to like do the hard stuff. But it's hard to do. I mean, take it from me. I used to be someone who would say a lot of things I would regret in arguments in the heat of the moment. And something I have to continue to force myself to do in my current relationship is if I start to feel angry, which I don't even know if I've even ever gotten there. I mean, it's happened a couple of times where I would start to feel really emotional, and then I'd have to leave the room. I'd have to walk away because I'm not in a place right now where I can be kind. And I know that if I'm not being kind and if I'm not coming from a loving place, this is going to be pointless because we're just going to go in circles. And, learning to do that took a lot of learning to treat myself well, too. And realize because my partner is the same way. He's always very kind in arguments. And I don't know. I just think that we really do have to learn that even when people are struggling, that does not give them an excuse to not be nice to others. Just because someone's going through hard stuff doesn't mean that they're allowed to treat you poorly. And we have to learn that empathy does not equal tolerance. All right, Aries side of the connection. I don't know. That felt like a very specific message for somebody. Not as general. Hierophant. There's a new perspective that you're needing to see here. There's something, let me clarify this. The universe is asking you to look at the bigger picture of what's going on here. But I want more on this Hierophant. More on this Hierophant. The Eight of Swords and the Ten of Swords. Oof! Aries. Dang, you've gotten pretty used to getting screwed over, haven't you? This Ten of Swords, I feel like this is very much what you're used to in your experience. It's this Ten of Swords energy. And I feel like it's become very familiar for you. And I feel like this connection was a really big reflection, not of what you deserve, but of what you're used to. With this Eight of Swords here. This Eight of Swords kind of reflecting limiting beliefs about what's possible for you in love. I feel like this person actually reflected back a lot of maybe deeper wounds too, deeper wounding. I feel like this connection was very much purposeful in giving you opportunity to heal things below the surface too. So there is so much more to this connection than you think, and I ultimately feel like the purpose of it runs a lot deeper than you think too, because, I mean, I will say and have learned that our relationships are our biggest teachers, and the relationships that hurt us the most are usually the ones that are teaching us and helping us heal the most. So when we're willing to kind of focus on, okay, what is this teaching me and how can I heal from this so that my life can improve, so that I can attract better connections, that's where we find the growth in our experience instead of just continuing to repeat same cycles, which is really difficult. It's difficult to do. This is for Aries side of this connection. So there is a different perspective that's needed, especially when it comes to like how this, I feel like, is mirroring your shadow side. I think back, I was dealing with an emotionally abusive connection about 5 years ago, and I spent a lot of time focused on that person and how their behavior was wrong, and I was 100% right in all that. Their behavior was wrong. But there were a lot of things about that connection that I didn't do all that well too. And I wasn't, being honest about what I needed. I wasn't showing up authentically. There were a lot of things that I could have changed. But one of the biggest things I recognized was that person mirrored my shadow side back to me. They showed me parts about myself that I didn't love, in the ways that, you know, I was poked at, and the ways that that person hurt me. It really brought to the surface things within myself that I needed to love. It's like that person made me feel unlovable in all of the ways that I believed I was unlovable. And through the healing of that connection, I learned to love the things about myself that I believed made me unlovable, which then in turn attracted connections that do love me for who I am into my life. So there's always a deeper purpose, as long as we're willing to try to look at the mirror of the situation. All right, Aries side. That just flew out. 8 of Pentacles, 4 of Cups. Huh, okay. What is, so, give me a second. So much of your energy, okay, 6 of Swords. So much of your energy went toward, for so long, how to make this work. How to make this connection work, even though it consistently showed you that it wasn't. But the more that you tried to make it work and almost like force it, the more hurt you ended up getting. One of the best things that I've ever learned and that I try to bring forth in all of my readings is that what is meant for you will never require you to force it. It will never require you to change yourself or somebody else in order to make it work. Now, attracting the right things into our life might require us to dive into, you know, things about ourselves, ways that we need to change, behavior that we need to change, things of that nature. But in terms of like trying to force what isn't working, that is usually a sign that we are actually blocking what is meant for us. And I feel like you put so much effort into this connection for so long, expecting things to eventually be better. But then in turn, what you got was just more of the same. And I think that, you know, I'm not blaming you for that. Of course, when you love and care about someone, of course you're going to want to do everything in your power to try to make it work. But sometimes we get to a point where we're trying to make something work at the expense of our own mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And that's where we start dipping into, you know, caring more about a connection or over-prioritizing a person ahead of ourselves or the love for ourselves. All right, Aries side of this connection. There we go. I can't figure out if that's upright or not. 9 of Wands in reverse, Death, and Strength in reverse. This connection is the repetition of a cycle. This isn't the first time you've been in a dynamic like this before. This is the repetition of a cycle. It's not giving me more than that, though. This is the repetition of a cycle. This is what you're used to experiencing in love. You know, part of the way that we learn to say yes to what it is that we want in our life is we have to learn to say no to anything that doesn't align with that. Even if that means facing the fear that nothing better will ever come along. And I feel like I said, you're looking for someone who you have an intellectual connection with. There's a lot of passion there, but someone that you can feel safe around emotionally, someone that is stable, that is secure, that is supportive, that is there for you, someone that shows up. Like someone that is just freaking like how do I say it? Like just stable in a connection. Like you know they're going to be there. You can call them any time of the night. You know they're going to be there for you. You deserve that. But I feel like some of the times, Aries, you get some of that and you say, okay, this is good. Now I'm going to try to change or make this other stuff work or pretend like I don't need this stuff. When you do, you need what it is that you desire in love. And that's not a weakness. That's what you deserve. So of course you need it. And I feel like so much of the time we have a tendency to settle for so much less than what it is that we truly desire, because in our mind we're like, well, what if this is as good as it gets? And then we try to make it work despite the fact that it isn't meeting our needs or it isn't making us feel the way that we ultimately desire to feel. You know, loved, supported, cared for, respected, reciprocated, all those things. This person's energy toward Aries. What does Aries need to know about this person's energy toward them? Seven of Cups and the Devil. Woof. Like every time I tap into this person's energy, I'm just like, oh my God. Seven of Cups with the Devil. First and foremost, this person does not know what the hell they want. It's like they know they want love, but they don't actually, I don't know, it's like they don't know what they want. I mean, everybody on some level desires to love and be loved. The authentic, everyone desires authentic connection. But there's this devil. It's almost like they're prioritizing toxic situations in their life, like situations that aren't good for them. And I feel like that's what I mean by like they don't know what they want. In terms of like they don't know what their soul actually wants. Which I feel, because when you show up with unconditional love for someone, you're there to love them and care for them, but they don't reciprocate that. And they sabotage it for whatever reason. Their ego gets in the way. They push it away. Whatever the case happens. Or whatever the case is, whatever happens. That, at the end of the day, is their loss, right? They're losing unconditional love from someone who truly cared about them. You're losing somebody who didn't know how to love you well, right? When you look at it that way, you're like, okay, yeah, that's their loss. Obviously, that doesn't make it any easier to get through, right? Because you're like, well, why can't I have the love that I desire? Why can't I have the love that I give? My question for you, Aries, is are you setting the standard for the people in your life to show up in the way that you show up for them? Or are you accepting way less than how you show up because you think that that's as much as you can have? And when you start to look at that, you can stop reflecting on how this person is making bad decisions, because I do feel like they are. But that's not going to help you, right? It's not, they're making decisions rooted in devil energy. Toxicity, addiction, just not good. But how are you making decisions that are negatively affecting you? How are you accepting way less than what you deserve? How are you not loving yourself fully? How are you holding back how it is that you really feel or what you really need to try to keep the peace, to try to keep the connection? Because you think it's as good as it can get, right? And that's not saying, I'm not trying to blame you or say you're doing anything wrong or that you're even, you should, I'm not saying you should know better. I'm saying you are acting in alignment with as good as you think it can get for you, and the universe is saying this isn't what you deserve. And I feel like that's been kind of the theme of this connection is like, okay, yeah, this person doesn't feel good enough for love, so I feel like they come from this place of ego, they don't reciprocate, they don't treat you well. But I also feel like at the same time, you're coming from this place of not feeling good enough for love by accepting the love, like the bare minimum love that someone like this is capable of providing you. And focusing on that side of things, focusing on the mirror, focusing on the reflection, that allows you to have your more power and control over the situation because you can see what you did that led to this outcome, right? Otherwise, you're not going to know how to break the cycle. We only know how to break the cycle when we focus on the role that we played. This person's energy toward Aries. And like what the connection is trying to teach you about you. I feel like it was a lack of commitment from this person is what it came down to. Not in terms of like, you could have been married, could have been in a committed relationship, but in terms of like their energy, being committed to working through the hard stuff, to the communication, to showing up for the connection, even when they didn't want to staying kind in the midst of arguments, all that stuff, which honestly is like the real work of a relationship. I feel like that's kind of where this Three of Cups in reverse comes from. Same Three of Cups in reverse that you have in between this connection is it's like things fell apart because there wasn't reciprocation. And that's inevitable. Any connection that isn't anything in this world where you are giving way more than you're receiving is not going to be sustainable for you. Because eventually, Aries, you are going to run out of energy to give because you're not getting any from what you're giving to, and you're not giving any to yourself because you're giving all your energy away to others. And eventually, you're going to say, I have nothing left to give. And that's anything that is rooted in that dynamic is not sustainable. The best thing I ever did for myself, one of the best things I ever did for myself in my relationships was focus on what's being reciprocated. And, you know, focus on, okay, if I show up in this connection, can I trust that this person is going to show up for me? And if I'm the one constantly showing up and then somebody else isn't showing up for me, that doesn't mean I'm like, screw you, get the hell out of my life. It just means I distance myself. And I stop showing up as much because I'm not going to pour into people who aren't willing to do the same for me. And when I got to that place, I started attracting the connections that do pour into me. This person's energy toward Aries. Oof. Look at that. 8 of Pentacles in reverse. You're giving all of this energy, and I feel like they're over here. Oh my gosh. Okay. You're giving all of this energy. I'm like getting mad at this person for you here, Aries. I feel like they're kind of, they were coasting in this connection. I feel like you were kind of bearing the burden of it. That doesn't make you better than them. It doesn't mean that you're better than them or whatever the case is. You know, we're all at different places in our journey, but people can only meet you to where they're at today, right? So this person obviously has some healing and some growth that they need to go through before they're going to be capable of loving not just you, but anybody in the right way. And that is up to them, whether or not they decide to take that journey, whether or not they decide to learn to love themselves well enough to love other people well. And I feel like that's where, you know, you have to understand that sometimes there is literally nothing you could have done to make this person treat you better, because it wasn't a reflection of you, the reason that they weren't showing up for this or treating you in the way that you deserve. It's a reflection of them. That's where the shadow energy comes in. You know, I think this person brought to the surface things within yourself that you don't find very lovable and made you feel unlovable for the things that this connection brought to the surface. But this doesn't have anything to do with what isn't lovable. This doesn't have to do with the fact that you're not lovable. This has to do with the fact that this connection is a reflection of how lovable you think you are. Because we accept the love we think we deserve, and if we're accepting way less than what we deserve, that is because we think that is all we can have. That's because we think that's all we're deserving of. But you are deserving of being loved well. You're deserving of everything that you desire in a connection, but you have to start approaching your connections from that place. It's hard, but you have to get picky. You have to be willing to say, this is what I require, and I'm not saying this from a conceited way or because I'm better than you kind of way. You're saying it because you're saying, you know, this is what I bring to the table. I bring to the table unconditional love. You can trust me. I'm loyal. I'm caring. I'm kind. This is what I bring to the table. Therefore, this is what I'm looking for because this is what I'm deserving of. And when you can come from that place, it's not that you're saying, you know, it's not coming from a conceited place of this is what you have to do in order to be in my life. It's saying this is what I provide and I deserve the same in return. And that's how right there you value yourself. Because if not, you're saying I'm going to give you all of this energy, but I'm going to accept little, which means I value you more than I value me. And that's not fair for you. And anything that is rooted in that dynamic will eventually fall apart. Which brings us to the extended. You have inevitable with the 3 of Cups in reverse. I'm going to pull 9 different messages, and I have an advice card to pull at the very end. Thank you so much, Aries, as always, for your support of my channel. I do obviously hope that this reading helped and resonated with you in a way that you were needing today. And as always, Aries, I wish you nothing but love and healing and all the good stuff on your journey moving forward. All right, bye, Aries.